Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Reviews.
Beer and Bread is a little two-player game, a little box game that my wife and I found on the Dice Tower cruise. We were looking through the shelves, looking at what games were there at the great Dice Tower library. And we came across this little small game called Beer and Bread. I had never heard about it. I didn't know it was kind of a hot game at the time. We pulled it off the shelf, played it, fell in love with it, and right there on the cruise, I ordered my own copy to make sure it was delivered by the time that I got home. I liked it that much. Beer and Bread is one of the best games to be released in quite a long time. I really love and adore this game. It is a two-player only game, which I also love. I love it, and it would fit right in that Cosmo line, not only the size of the box, but the gameplay. What a pack of punch this game gives you as you're going through it and playing it and going through and building your beer and your bread. The game gives you so many interesting decisions. Each card can be used in one of many different ways. You can use it for the power or to build bread or to get resources or even be the beer or bread that you make. That's so fascinating. And then you can only build one beer or one bread at a time, and then you can have one of each until you play a card for its power, then they swap out. But sometimes powers will let you build more than one beer or one bread, and that can be powerful too. But gaining those resources that are limited each round, and every other round they're even more reduced. Maybe that's what I should do. And each time I am building up as we play a card, then in one round in the summers, I have to give you my card and draft. And then you give me your hand of cards. But is that card I'm building towards ever going to come back in my hand? But in the winter phases or fall phases, we're not going to switch hands. Instead of drafting, we're going to have 3 face-up cards on the board, and then we're kind of giving up a card there if I want to play it. And that's interesting as we have a communal 3-card deck that we can exchange with. So each round plays a little bit differently, or at least every other round does, as you're going through this universe and building the bread and beer. Now, some cards will let you score extra points at the end, and once you divvy up your points, you're going to score for whatever your lowest amount is, beer or bread. So it's not, you can't just pound the beer, because you're going to score your bread. So you kind of evenly have to get this. It's a classic Reiner Knizia thing, even though he's not the designer of this game. This game always gives me very interesting decisions. At first, I didn't like that scoring of score your least. I'd prefer just to add them up. But that made me kind of not just pound one strategy every time or find one combination of cards that were really good. Instead, I had to find 2 avenues to score. I found that brilliant, especially for a game called Beer and Bread, because it's not beer, it's not bread, it's beer and bread. So I have to do both and figure out which one I'm going to score, which will be the lowest of my 2 scores. How fascinating of a game is this? This is one of the strongest additions to my gaming library. I have pulled this game out so many times to play over and over and over again, and it's one I can highly recommend to you if you need a 2-player game at all. This is one that, I don't care if it's a 2-player, 3-player, or 8-player. This is one of the best games I've played in a long time, and I'm happy to have it in my collection. Beer and Bread, a keeper for us. Here is Beer and Bread, a 2-player only game. You know, how would you do that? Everybody else is working, you're in here having a brewski, and you're eating your bread. How nice. Rulebook, which we'll take a look at in a few minutes. Open up, everything's going to be nicely packed in here. Look. You got a place for all your stuff, you got your scoreboards, you got your cards. And these are a little slicker than I like, to be honest. But look, multi-use cards, you can easily see everything that's supposed to be there. The little wood pieces you're going to get, everything looks like the item that it's supposed to look like. That's real nice. Get the water that looks like the water. It's so great. And you're going to have a board that will pop out. It's colored on both sides. This side is just a waste. It's just to show you the universe. But here you're going to have the board. It's going to sit between the players, and you'll be playing cards on each side. You have your resource over here. Very nicely done board. Here is the rule book for the game. Picture on the front. Then you're going to have your components with the pictures and set up over here. You got words and arrows showing you exactly where everything goes. Play the game. This is the overview, so everything you'll be doing in the game. They'll be broken up into fruitful years and dry years. So the fruitful will be in green. You'll see pictures of examples, etc. over here. And then the dry years will start here. It's in a different color. Kind of the same thing. Now, it's not as thick because a lot of what you're doing is the same in both. And then you'll end the game. There's a QR code down here if you need something. The explanation of all of the upgrades that you're going to have in the game will teach you how to play. If there's any references, you'll use this quite a bit. and an overview on the back. Fantastic rulebook. We actually found this on the shelf at Dice Tower Cruise. Didn't know anything about it, just saw it and thought it looked fun. And I was able to sit down, read the rulebook, and play. It took me about 10 minutes, maybe 15 for you, maybe 20. But it's an easily digestible book. 0 issues. I use this reference a lot here sometimes. You know, we want to look up a certain card or something. We kind of pass this around. Great job. You're going to put the board out on the game. You're going to have a deck of cards that will have bread cards that are yellow and beer cards that's blue. You shuffle them up together, it's no problem. And then you're going to give a number of cards to each player. Then what a player is going to do is they're going to take their hand of cards. They're going to choose one, the first player will. And then the other player will also play a card, and then they'll exchange hands. Then you will play your card. Now, when you play a card, you can always play it for the item. So if I play this as my first card, I get a water, a brown, and a yellow. If it was my second card, I paid for the ingredients. So the first time I got these 3 items. Let's say in the second round I played this card, I would get all those items again and these. So it's going to start pounding on top of each other as you're going through. I can also play the card for what's on the bottom. And these will have different things. This one has a baker's hat. You may hold 1 additional bread card in your bakery. Normally you can only hold 1. If I were to play this card for the power, I would have 2. This is during the harvest phase. When the other player collects any water during one of their harvest and store actions, you collect 1 also. You'll have some that will happen in certain times of the year. At the end of the card phase of each year, you may discard 1 card from your hand and draw a new one. And also some of these will give you victory points at the end of the game. So the one with coins is end of game scoring. At the game end, for every 2 beer cards that you sold, gain 1 extra coin for beer. So let me take you through a turn and kind of show you how the game will work. You're going to play 3 days and the game will end, or 6 rounds. Every day you're going to have a fruitful and then a dry season that will go back to back. So green, red, green, red, green, red, and then you score up. On the green ones, you're going to put the number of resources at this number. So it says 7 wheat, 8 hops, 6 carrots, and 6 here. Then once you have your resources, the number of resources that you're supposed to have in each of these locations, the players will draw their cards and be ready to play. You're going to choose 1 card from your hand. You can pay for the resources, you can pay it for the power, or you can bake bread. If you have the resources listed on it, you can bake this bread and it'll score you this many victory points in the game. At this point, I don't have any resources. Maybe I'll play my card down. I'll reveal it if I'm the first player, and then I will give my cards over to the person over here, with them, the person on my right, giving me their cards that they had in their hand, and I will continue to do the same thing. Now, the resources up here, you'll take it from this area. If this area is out of resources, you cannot get anymore. I can play it for the power at the bottom. If I do, there's different symbols that match, and I would just tuck the card under there. I'm going to come back to this in just a second, but no, I can always play it for the power at the bottom, whatever it may do for me. The other thing I can do is, if I have the resources, I can bake the bread or the beer. So if I had these resources, I would get 9 points at the end of the game. And I would say I'd give up these resources from my supply, which is right here. So my storage is going to give me 9 spots, and I can get more through card play. But I can hold 9 items. I would pay those items if I had it, and I would put this into my bread. And once I gave up the resources, I can turn it over. Now on the next turn, if I wanted to bake another piece of bread, giving up my resources, I could not because it's already full. I have one, but I could definitely make a beer if I had the required resources. Once again, I'd put it down there. Now, I can no longer bake any bread or beer because it's full. So what I have to do is play a card for its power. I would tuck it under here so you can see just the power on it. And then I could take all my beer and all my bread and put it into my scoring pile for the end of the game. Now, if they're here at the end of the game, they're still going to score for you. You don't have to sweep them off, but sweeping them off is going to allow you to have access. And now maybe I could build another beer card if I had the items. Now the dry phase is going to work a little bit different. So what's going to happen here normally is you're going to have less resources. Instead of 7, I'm going to have 5. Instead of 8, I'm going to have 4. Instead of 6, I'm going to have 4, and 6 and 4. So there's going to be less resources available. What they're going to do is everybody's going to draw their cards from the deck per normal, but 3 cards will go straight up like this. Now, when you're drawing cards, any cards that you played for the resource last round will be picked up in your hand, and then you'll draw up to the amount of cards that you should have in your hand. these are the cards you're going to play this round in the red phase or the dry phase, which means I know all the cards I'm going to have. I no longer will be giving cards to my opponent. I'll be playing the cards in my hand. But I do have an option. There's 3 face-up cards. If I wanted to, I could take one of my cards and replace it with one of the face-up cards. But if I do this and I take this card, it has to be played immediately. So that's really the only big differences in the dry phase versus the green phase, is there are going to be less resources, and you're no longer going to draft cards. You're going to have these face-up cards that you can utilize. Once you play all of these rounds and you get to the end, you're going to score all the bread and beer that you have. You get any end-of-game scoring that you might have over here, and you're only going to score your bread or your beer, whichever one is lower. So let's say this is the only thing I scored. 7 for all my beer and bread for all my, or 5 for all my bread, and I don't have any scoring cards. So my score is 7 for beer and 5 for bread. I would score the 5 for the bread. I'm only going to score whatever the lowest amount is. It's not my lowest cards, it's my lowest total score for beer and my lowest total score for bread. I score the lowest of those two. Whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. Who should buy this game? Anybody that plays 2-player games. And you want a quick one, it's about 30 minutes. But it feels like a full Euro. When I'm playing this game with the multi-use cards, the card drafting, the resource management, and then the economics of building this beer and bread as I go through. Wow, what a punch this game gives you in such a small box with fantastic components in a short time period. Wow, this is one of the most tightly designed games I've had. This is a fantastic experience. I've played this game over and over and over and over, and I've shown this game to a lot of people. I just happened to stumble upon it. So what a fantastic game. What I highly recommend to you for a 2-player gaming experience. This will fit right in with your Cosmo line. Beer and bread. Keeper for us.